Business Math Day 6. Again, we are on the Math Foundations under decimals. They're assuming, again, you're not using your calculator to do the work. If you want to do the work on the paper and then use your calculator to check, that's okay. It says, as an office assistant for Main Street Clothing, Amy Wilson worked 30.5 hours last week. She's paid $17 an hour. What is her weekly pay? So if we're going to calculate that, she gets $17.40 for every hour she works. She worked 30.5 hours. We're going to end up having to multiply. So we have $17.40. We're going to multiply it by the 30.5. And so we're going to go ahead and just multiply it like we would with whole numbers, and we figure out where the decimal goes at the end. So first of all, multiplying this out, 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 4 is 20, carry my 2. 5 times 7 is 35, 6, 7. 5 times 1 is 5, 6, 7, 8. We go to the next digit over, so we add that 0, and then we have a whole bunch of zeros when we multiply that out. We do the next one over, and so now we have to add 2 zeros. I'm writing on top of that other problem. Again, I can't add space, so you just kind of have to work with me. 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 4 is 12. Carry my 1. 3 times 7 is 21, plus 1 is 22. 3 times 1 is 3, 4, 5. And then we add. So we have, adding the first column, 0, the second column, 0, 7, then we get 10, and then we get 3 and 5, and so 5, 3, 0, 7, 0, 0 is what we have. Then we figure out where our decimal goes. To figure out where our decimal goes, we go from the end of the number. It's 2 places from the end on this one and 1 place from the end on that one. So 2 plus 1 would be 3 places from the end. 1, 2, 3. Since we're talking about money, that would be $530.70. We don't need the third zero because money only goes to the hundredth spot when we multiply that out. So again, just double checking. If I take $17.40 times 30.5, I should get $530.70, which is what I got when I multiplied that out by hand. Number 2, Betty Taylor purchased 23.09 yards of cloth from the Discount Fabrics. The fabric was priced at $15 a yard. What was the total dollar amount? So she paid $15 for each yard. She bought 23.09 yards. So 23.09 times our 15, and we multiply that out. 9 times 5 is 45. 9 times 0 is 0 plus 4. 5 times 3 is 15. 5 times 2 is 10 plus 1, so 11. We move over 1 spot, so we add 1 0. 1 times 9 is 9. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 2 is 2. So we get 5. 9 plus 4 is 13. 6, 4, 3. On this one, we only have 2 places from the end on the first number, and it's right on the end of the last number, even though the decimal's not there. So we just move 2 places from the end total, and so we would get $346.35 when we multiply that out. The next one there says, on a recent trip, Nancy Gonzalez drove her car 304 miles. The company agreed to reimburse her at the rate of 37 cents per mile. What is the amount of a reimbursement check? So we're going to take that 304 miles. We're going to multiply it by the 37 cents. So 7 times 4 is 28. 7 times 0 is 0 plus 2. 7 times 3 is 21. Move over a spot, so add a 0. 3 times 4 is 12. Carry my 1. 3 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is still 1. 3 times 3 is 9. And add. I get 8, 4, 2, 11. No places from the end on the top number, but 2 places from the end on the bottom number, so 0 plus 2 is 2. So I have $112.48 for the amount of my reimbursement check. Number 4, it says, during the week of August 16th, Nancy Walker worked 35.25 hours and earned $581.70. How much did Nancy earn per hour? Do not use a calculator. Round your answer to the nearest cent. So, she earned $581.70 total. She worked 35.25 hours. I'm finding her earnings per hour. So I'm going to take the amount she earned divided by, which is what the word per means, the hours. So 581.70, whoops, my 1 isn't in there, 581.70 divided by 35.25. When we divide with decimals, our divisor, the number out in front, has to be a whole number. It is not, it's a decimal number. So I need to move my decimal so that it's on the end. So I'm moving my decimal 2 places, which is the same thing as multiplying by 100, making my divisor 3,525. If I move my decimal 2 places on my divisor, I also have to move my decimal 2 places here. So 2 places over puts it right after the 7. So I'm going to have 5810170 decimal point. So 58,170. Now I'm rounding my answer to the nearest cent. So tenths, hundredths, and I actually have to go to thousandths so I know where to round. Tenths, hundredths would be the nearest cent, and then one more place for my rounding. So I'm going to start out here doing my division. 3,525 into 5,817. Looks like it's just going to go one time. 3,525. I have to subtract 2, borrowing 9, 2, 2.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Bringing down my 0 here. 3,525, I'm going to divide that into 22,920. 3 would go in there, it looks like about 6 times. So 6 times 5 would be 30. 6 times 2 is 12, 13, 14, 15. 6 times 5 is 30 plus 1. 6 times 3 is 18, 19, 20, 21. Change colors here so I can see where I'm at, and I'm going to subtract. 0, 12 minus 5 would be 7, 7, 1. Bring down the 0 after the decimal. So 3,525 into 17,700 looks like about 5 times. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 2 is 10, 11, 12. 5 times 5 is 25, plus 1 would be 26. 5 times 3 is 15, 16, 17. Whoops, I didn't line my numbers up very well. Zero, 7, 7, 1. I brought down my other 0. So 5 times 5 was 25. 5 times 2 is 10, 11, 12. 5 times 5 is 25, plus 1 is 26. And then 5 times 3 is 15, 16, 17. My board's a little bit off. I need to go ahead and subtract. So, can't subtract 5 from 0, can't borrow from 0, so I borrow from the 7 and make that a 6, which makes that 10. Borrow from the 10, make that 9, which makes that 10. 10 minus 5 is 5. 9 minus 2 would be 7. 6 minus 6 would be 0, and then I get zeros there, so I'm bringing down my other 0. I'm trying to take 3,525 into 750. It doesn't go in there, so I have to add a 0 and bring down the next 0. So 3,525 into 7,500 is going to go in there 2 times. 2 times 5 is 10. Carry my 1. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. 2 times 5 is 10, plus 1 is 11. And 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7. And we don't really have to subtract to get our remainder because we're far enough that we can then round. Since there's a 2 on the end, we're just going to go ahead and drop that because we're not going to round it up. And so in money terms, we'd have $16.50. Again, after you do your long division on your paper, go ahead and check it with your calculator. So $581.70 divided by 35.25 gives me 16.502 ... So $16.50 is where we rounded it, so that looks good. Number 5, we're really not going to have room to do our division. Amy Jenkins invested $6,425 in the Pacifica Equity Mutual Fund. Each share costs $6.66. How many shares of Pacifica Equity Mutual Fund did Amy purchase? Do not use a calculator, and if necessary, round to the nearest tenth of a share. And so in this case, I am trying to find how many shares she's purchased. If this was the total amount invested, and each one of my shares was $6.66. So I have to take my $6,425 and divide it by my $6.66. Again, if I'm dividing on my paper, my divisor has to be a whole number, and it's not, so I have to move my decimal 2 places and use 666, which means I have to move my decimal 2 places here. Right now it's right on the end, which means I've got to go 2 zeros over and put my decimal. So when I divide here, I'm going to have 642500 point. I'm rounding to the nearest tenth, so I need a 0 for the 10th spot, and I also want a 0 for the 100th spot, so I will know where to round to. And then my decimal is going to go straight up there when I go ahead and do my division. So 666 is not going to go into 642. I have to take 666 into 6,425. So 6,425 looks like it's probably going to go in there about 9 times. So we're going to go ahead and put a 9 up here. 9 times 6 is 54. 9 times 6 is 54, plus 5 would be 59. 9 times 6 is 54, plus 5 would be 59. Again. And then I got to subtract. 5 minus 4 is 1. Borrowing, making that 12, I get 3. Borrowing, making that 13, I would get 4. And bring down my 0. So I have 431 for my remainder, brought down the next 0. 666 into 4,310. Let's see, 6 would go in there about 6 times. Let's try 6. 6 times 6 is 36. 6 times 6 is 36, 37, 38, 39. 6 times 6 is 36, so I'm going to get 39 again. And if I subtract here, I get 4. One. My lines are off. 3. 314 if I subtracted that right. I got to bring down my next 0. So 6,666 into 3,140. I'm going to switch colors because my lines are getting all messed up here. 6 into 31 about 5 times, but that's going to be too big, so I'm going to say 4 times. Let's try 4. 4 times 6 is 24. 24, 25, 26. And then I'm going to get 26 again. So when I subtract 6, 13 minus 6 is 7. And that was 10, 4. 476 if I subtracted that right. So I add the next 0. 666 into 4760. 7 would be 42. 4. Let's try 7. So 7 times 6 is 42. 42, 43, 44, 45, 46. And then I'll get another 46. And so when we subtract 8, 15 would be 9, so we get 98, and add another 0. 666 into 980 goes in there one time. We don't really need to subtract because now we can round to the nearest tenth, and we would say 964.7, since we're not going to round that up, is what it cost per, or how many shares, how many shares we purchased. And so if we go ahead and double check that, 6,425 divided by 6.66, we have 964.71, which is what we got when we divided. And again, since there was a 1 after the 10th spot, we didn't round it up, so we said 964.7, as I scribbled all over everything. Okay, number 6 is where we are. Last week, the delivery van for Johnny on the Spot delivery was driven 856.8 miles. During the same period, the van used 49.5 gallons of diesel fuel. How many miles per gallon did the van get during the week? So again, notice we have that miles per gallon. We're taking the miles divided by the gallon. Do not use a calculator if necessarily, round to the nearest tenth. And here again it tells you the average is found by dividing the total miles by the total number of gallons used, which is what miles per gallon means. So we're going to take 856.8 miles, we're going to divide it by the 49.5. Again, our divisor has to be a whole number, so we've got to move the decimal one place, making that 495. Means we also have to move it one place here, which makes it 8,568 decimal point. Again, this one says round your answer to the nearest tenth, so we need to add the 0 for the tenths and one more for the hundredths so that we can see where we're going to round to. So we're going to take 495 and we're going to divide it into 856. Doesn't look like it's going to go 2 times, it's probably just going to go once. 1 times that is 495, and then we're going to subtract, so we get 1. That'll be a 7. 15 minus 9 is 6, so we get 361, and we bring down the 8. So 495 into 3,618. Looks like it'll probably go in there 7 times. 7 times 5 is 35. 7 times 9 is 63. 4, 5, 6, 66. 7 times 4 is 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. 8 and 4 is, or 8 and 6 is 14, so 34. So we have 3, we have 11, so that would be 5, and then we have 153. And so now I've got to bring down my 0. So that's going to be after my decimal point there. And so 1,530 divided by 495 would be about 3 times, it looks like. 3 times 5 is 15. Oops, over here. 3 times 3 is 27, 28. 3 times 4 is 12, 13, 14. And if we subtract, we are going to have to borrow again. So 5, 12 would be 4, so 45, and bring down our 0. 495 into 450, not going to go in there anytime. And so in this case, when we round it off to the nearest tenth, the 3 is in the 10th spot, there's a 0 behind that, so 17.3 would be our answer as what were our miles per gallon. We got 17.3 miles for every gallon of gas. And again, if I go ahead and take 856.8 and divide it by our 49.5, 17.30, ... So 17.3 is what we did. Seven, 8, and 9, they want you to convert a fraction to a decimal. Just to remind you again, fractions are really division problems. 1 divided by 6. So I'm taking the 1 on the inside, I'm dividing it by 6. So I'm adding my decimal point and some zeros. It says round to the nearest hundredth, so there'd be to the hundredth, 1 more spot for my rounding. And so in this case, 6 doesn't go into 1 since that's before the decimal. I'm going to put the 0 up there because it looks pretty. 6 goes into 10 one time, and I subtract and get 4, bring down my 0. 6 goes into 40 6 times. 6 times 6 is 36, and I get a 4 again and bring down my 0. 6 goes into 40 6 times again, which is 36, and I don't need to keep going because I can round it off. Since there's a 6 behind there, I'm going to round that off to 0.17 as to what 1/6 is equivalent to. So on my calculator, I'm going to do 1 divided by 6, and I get 1.66666666, which I rounded off to 0.17. So number 8 says convert the fraction 3/5 to a decimal. It means 3 divided by 5. So the 3 is on the inside and the 5 is on the outside. I put my decimal point. I want to round it to the nearest hundredth. So tenths, hundredths, and one more place for rounding. 5 doesn't go into 3, so I'm going to put a 0 up there. 5 goes into 30 6 times. 5 times 6 is 30, and I get a 0, which tells me I'm going to have a 0 and a 0. So when I round that off, I'm just going to have 0.60. When it says round to the nearest hundredth, they do like you to show that hundredth spot. Instead of saying 6/10, we have 60 hundredths. So 3 divided by 5 on my calculator, I get 0.6, but I have the 0 there to show that I did go to the hundredth spot. Number 9, convert 3/8 to a decimal. So again, that means 3 divided by 8. And so the 3's on the inside, the 8's on the outside. I add my decimal, and I want to go to the nearest hundredth again, and one more place for rounding. 8 doesn't go into 3, so they're going to put a 0 in there. 8 goes into 30 3 times. 3 times 8 is 24, so I get 6 left over. 8 goes into 60. 7 times 8 is 56, so I get a 4. Bring down my 0. 8 goes into 40 5 times. I do get 40, but I need to round it to the nearest hundredth. Since there's a 5 or higher behind that, 0.38 is where I'm going to round that off to. So 3 divided by 8, you get 0.375, which to the nearest hundredth, 0.38. Number 10, 11, 12, convert to a proper fraction, reduce your answer to lowest terms. The correct way to read this is by naming the place that your last digit is in. This is red, looking at the number behind the decimal, 62 tenths hundredths, so 62 hundredths. I'm going to put 62 over 100. Again, there's 2 places after the decimal. There's going to be 2 zeros on that number underneath there. So if I have 62 hundredths and I want to reduce it down, both of those are divisible by 2. 62 divided by 2 is 31. 100 divided by 2 is 50. Now it's in lowest terms, and I can't reduce it any farther than that. Now, if I have my decimal on my calculator, 0.62, and I want to change it to a fraction, I hit Shift and the fraction button, and I get 31 over 50. You do have to put 0.62 and hit equals, so the 0.62 is down in the answer spot, then Shift and the fraction button, and it changes it to 31/50. So the next one, and these didn't show me very much variation again, I want to convert to a proper fraction. This is 35 tenths hundredths again. So I put 35 over 100. I then go ahead and reduce. I can divide by 5. 35 divided by 5 is 7. 100 divided by 5 is 20. So 7/20. So again on my calculator, 0.35, hit equals, Shift and the fraction button, 7/20 is what we should come up with. Here, again, tenths hundredths. So we're putting 70 hundredths. 70 hundredths would be my proper fraction. I want to reduce it down. Since they both end in zeros, I know I can divide both of them by 10. If I divide by 10, it knocks a 0 off. So I get 7/10. Now all of these were in the hundredth spot. If I just give you another number, say I have 0.123, then I'd have 123 over tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So 3 zeros on that number, and that one you can't reduce, and so you just leave it like that.